Welcome to October. And I know already so many of our brains are hitting towards the end of the month as we think about Halloween. And I'm sure a lot of us have already bought Halloween candy and have already figured out kids' costumes and all of those things that are going to happen at the end of the month. But something that I know begins to stir in us at the beginning of the month is all the other places in our kids' diet that we may not be making the most of every opportunity with. Because as you listen to a lot of the repeat episodes to how to handle Halloween that I'll link to from last year, I want you to also think about what can you be doing right here and now to make sure that you're optimizing the bites in the everyday foods that your kids are eating. So you don't feel threatened or fearful of the candy that's coming over the course of the upcoming month, but instead you're looking at how can you do things like add veggies throughout the month of October. That's exactly what we're going to be talking about in today's episode.
Hey Mama, I'm Ashley and welcome to the Veggies and Virtue podcast. In this podcast, you will find simple menu ideas, kitchen organizational systems spelled out for mom life, and feeding tips and tricks that are both evidence-based and grace-laced. I believe that you can find flexibility when it comes to feeding your family so that you can feel calm, capable, and connected in the kitchen. As a registered dietitian and Christian mom of 3 myself, I want you to break free from the mealtime battles and to feel equipped while feeding your kids all day long. Pull up a stool at my kitchen counter and let me pour you a cup of coffee and say a quick prayer for you. It's time to chat about the meal times, messes, moments, and ministry of motherhood.
First, I just want to go ahead and say thank you so much to all of you who have joined in this round of Muffin Club. We are officially on the second half of Muffin Club, and it's so fun to see that now 5 years in the running, this continues to be something that you all enjoy, that you all are engaged in. And a special shout out to each of you who have shared the pictures of the muffins that you're making on social. I love getting to see it. I love knowing that I'm not just talking into dead space or emailing out to people who may or may not even care, but instead to see that these are recipes that you're able to include in your home, offer to your kids, and that you're really enjoying. These recipes have been tried and true over the years. So I'm not just sending you on a wild goose hunt on Pinterest, but instead I'm giving you specifically the recipes that I know and love in my house to incorporate things like the protein we talked about last week, whole grains, and that added fiber boost in a lot of the recipes. And also, as we talk about in this week's recipe, veggies. Each and every one of the Muffin Club recipes will feature a different weekly vegetable. And this week, we're going to speak specifically to 5 easy ways that we can add veggies in October using pumpkin. Now, I know some people are totally team pumpkin. They'll eat it at the earliest onset of the season that they can. Others eat it year round and just recognize that it's a great nutritionally dense option to include in your diet. But then I know there's other people that are just a little less on board with pumpkin. And so I want to approach this episode helping you understand the appetites of kids. Because if you love pumpkin, that's awesome, and I'm with you. I really enjoy pumpkin personally. But if you're someone who is still kind of learning to like the added flavor of pumpkin, I want you to think about how you can leverage that, whether it be actually true of you, or you can just kind of process through what that feels like so that you might be able to better empathize with how your child feels approaching a new food, and especially approaching things like these strange orange vegetables that they maybe only see 1 month out of the year. And so while a lot of us are looking to help our kids learn to like carrots in the raw or cooked, depending on the age and stage of your child and choking hazards and things, or we might be looking for them to just snack on tomatoes or cucumbers or broccoli, the reality is a lot of kids struggle with vegetables. You've heard me say this again and again, especially in this series that we cover as Muffin Club runs, because I know that veggies are very difficult for families to get in to the diets of their children. Oftentimes we just default to offering them at dinner. And then when they don't eat them at dinner, it's even more exacerbating because that was our only shot for the day. And if that's the only time we're offering them and they're getting rejected, I know and I see in families all the time that we end up feeling a little bit more inclined to push or to pressure. We begin bribing that if they eat this, then they can have that. We really, really, really want our kids to eat veggies. And I know with good intent, but I'm hoping that today's episode is going to give you a little bit of a different spin on how to approach it. Not only through the lens and the taste buds of someone who's maybe learning to like something like pumpkin, but also in how we can make small changes to what we're offering our kids and how they can add up to really help our kids meet their overall nutritional needs. So outside of just waiting on dinner as an opportunity to offer veggies, I want us to look at how we can have these 5 easy ways of adding veggies in October at eating opportunities other than dinner time. Now, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I do want to go ahead and just defend some of my own professional credibility to mention, I know pumpkin is technically a fruit and not a vegetable, but I think that alludes to something that's so important for us to remember as parents, because so often we feel this just instinctual pressure that our kids must learn to like vegetables. When the reality is so many fruits offer our children the same nutritional advantages that a vegetable does. And somewhere along the line of from being kids and becoming adults, we start having this sense of superiority that vegetables are so much better for us and our children than fruit. And so we look at it as a negative if our kids have learned to like a lot of different fruits, but still aren't eating or accepting a wide variety of vegetables. And so today I want to just challenge you in thinking about vegetables that are maybe really a fruit, like a pumpkin, and how you can think about over the grand scheme of fruits and vegetables that you can expose your children to, but maybe put less pressure on vegetables specifically, but instead look at them as a combined food group where oftentimes we're going to help our children achieve the same nutritional benefits from eating either or both food groups. Another thing that I think is kind of helpful to think about when we look at how to add veggies into our kids' diets are the veggies that are actually fruits are oftentimes, not all the times, but are oftentimes those that our kids prefer first. If they're learning to like vegetables and maybe haven't developed a taste preference for some of those more bitter vegetables, things like this cruciferous cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and we counter that to things like pumpkin or tomatoes that just have a much sweeter and more mild taste, it's understandable why a lot of times our kids have an easier time getting their nutritional needs met by way of things like pumpkin or tomato before other options. Of course, I'm an advocate for exposing our kids to a wide variety of foods, making sure that a lot of different options are made available as your family is able to do so. However, I don't want to belittle the fact that adding veggies in to kid-friendly foods belittles their nutritional benefits. Because while yes, we definitely want kids to learn to like and to ultimately eat fruits and vegetables on their own in their own kind of natural state or typical presentation, it is okay, especially as our kids are learning to like these foods, to incorporate them in less obvious ways. Because oftentimes that's how we get our kids to willingly consume the nutritional benefits that come from these foods that otherwise, in and of themselves and on their own, our kids might still be learning to like. So let's dive into how we can easily add veggies this October by way of adding pumpkin to foods your children otherwise might be eating. The first way that I think is a really simple addition and kind of a seasonal flavor to consider is adding pumpkin to things like oatmeal. Specifically, if you're used to cooking oatmeal on the cooktop, you can easily mix in some mashed canned pumpkin to oatmeal and help give it a little bit more of a seasonal flair. Maybe add some cinnamon or brown sugar, maple syrup, pecans, whatever really fits your family's taste profile. You can easily add some pumpkin in for an easy addition of veggies. You might have heard me share before that sometimes we can add in shredded zucchini or riced cauliflower to kind of help cool down oatmeal. It's the same concept. It's not going to change the taste and the texture that much. This one, it'll probably change the taste and the color more so than the texture. So just be in tune with what your child's qualifiers are when it comes to eating oatmeal. If they're really, really, really specific on how they eat and enjoy their oatmeal, that being those who have gone through my programs or worked with me one-on-one, know that I talk about this with qualifiers. If your child has a lot of qualifiers for what constitutes oatmeal as a love-it food, then you may need to start really, 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 really small, like a teaspoon in the whole batch. This is not an opportunity to sneak foods by your kids. Instead, when we're looking at these easy ways to add veggies, we want to be open and transparent so we can continue to build and promote trust in the feeding relationship. But you're going to want to start small with adding that pumpkin to the oatmeal. So it might just be a teaspoon at first, but then in a big batch, like when I'm making it for myself and my 3 kids, I can add a half a cup to a cup of pumpkin and have it be incorporated in it in a way that's accepted and tolerated by everyone. Now, if you have my combination cards, you know that as I suggest ways that you can incorporate veggies into things like oatmeal, I share some recipes, including those to add pumpkin. It's just a really good, easy combination. And I will link in the show notes some of my favorite recipes for oatmeal that you might want to look at, and many of which have pumpkin added. You can either make an oatmeal bar or a hot cooked oatmeal or something like a baked oatmeal. So I'll link those in the show notes. The second way that you can add veggies this October using pumpkin is in baked goods, not just in those oat-based baked goods, but in things like this week's Muffin Club recipe. If you're not already signed up, make sure that you're getting each weekly recipe from me in your inbox each and every Friday. This week's recipe, we're going to feature pumpkin. And that is because it is so easy to incorporate pumpkin into something like a muffin batter or into something, I'll even go so far as to say a baked item like a pancake batter or a waffle batter, or even into the mixture that you're cooking French toast in. Some of these traditional carbs that we see our kids love and eat very willingly, it's really easy to incorporate pumpkin in to help up the amount of veggie intake that they have over the course of the day. Again, you might initially be starting small and it may seem so trivial that it doesn't even really add up for your child. But beyond breaking free of some of those qualifiers of what your kid constitutes as a love-it food and helping your child branch out to enjoy new tastes, new textures, new colors, and taste profiles, we can gradually incorporate more and more nutritional variety. We can boost the vitamins and minerals in these options that our kids are willing to eat. And in doing so, we can ease some of that pressure that we intuitively feel as parents of how are we going to get our kids to eat vegetables. A third way that you can be intentional about adding vegetables this October using pumpkin is by adding it to something like a smoothie. As I mentioned with the link to recipe ideas from my combination cards that work great for oatmeal, for things like a baked good, as in a muffin or a pancake, another easy way to up the veggie intake in our child's diet is by adding it to something like a smoothie, which I'll also link some recipes to below. This will give, again, a little bit more of a seasonal flair and kind of taste profile to the food the way that it would in, say, the oatmeal items that we talked about. But if you're making a smoothie that is already going to share some of the color profile with smoothies specifically, make sure that you're not mixing too many colors and ending up with a brown blender of sludge. But if you're already going to be making some smoothies and the pumpkin would add a really pretty color to it and you can really leverage that taste profile, this is an easy way to add veggies to a smoothie in a way that you maybe wouldn't naturally default to. Green smoothies are kind of the obvious way to get veggies in a smoothie. So think about this as kind of a seasonal option for expanding what types of veggies your family drinks and enjoys in a smoothie. The fourth way that you can add pumpkin this October to help up the veggie intake in your kids is by swirling it in some yogurt. If your child is used to you already buying, say, a larger container, like a quart of plain yogurt or maybe like a vanilla yogurt, you could easily swirl some canned pumpkin in there and let them see how orange do they want to make their yogurt. Again, depending on the ages and stage of your kids, different food play options are going to be more or less appropriate, but mixing in some pumpkin is going to help them meet their veggie needs. Even if they're only getting in a tablespoon or two at that given time, we're over the course of the day and over the course of a week, helping to gradually increase their veggie intake. So swirling it into yogurt and kind of using that as an opportunity to maybe switch to other yogurt options than maybe what you're already buying. Something that we do in my house that I think is a great option and would encourage you to try is to buy a whole milk plain yogurt in like a quart-sized container. And we also buy one, usually the same type, in a vanilla-based option. So that's obviously a little sweeter. It has that added sugar, but then we already are used to mixing those two. So mixing in something like pumpkin is less offensive, or at least offers less pushback with kids when they're already used to kind of mixing up their own yogurt concoction, versus if your child has a lot of qualifiers around their yogurt and they only like a certain type of yogurt that comes in an individualized size cup. So something definitely to consider as you try and add veggies this October. The fifth and final thing that I'll encourage you to consider is how could you add pumpkin to some of the sauces that you maybe already make. This could be something as simple as you're making boxed mac and cheese, and if you're making an orange variety, swirling in a little pumpkin as you make that cheese sauce before you toss all the noodles in is an easy way to just add a little bit of pumpkin, boost the veggie intake of something like a boxed mac and cheese just that much more. And you're helping expand what your child is willing to, especially with something like a preferred food like mac and cheese. As I've mentioned with each of these, you're going to know how specific your child is to what foods they prefer and with what level of specificity. So while we don't want to sneak or try and stretch them too much in a way that makes them feel as though they've lost a preferred food like mac and cheese, we can look for opportunities to slowly and gradually incorporate some added nutritional boosts like canned pumpkin into something like a mac and cheese. You could also be adding pumpkin into sauces like a spaghetti sauce as you're stirring it on the stove, just as you would diced vegetables to help kind of mix up that sauce. So if you're having spaghetti in the thermos at lunch or doing something like that, you can add some pumpkin in that way as well. I hope that these 5 ideas of how you could incorporate and add veggies this October through things like oatmeal, baked goods, smoothies, yogurt, and sauces give you some less conventional ideas, but really opportunistic ways to begin adding things like pumpkin into your child's diet, not just at dinner time, but how you can get veggies in at eating opportunities like breakfast, lunches, and snacks. For more easy and kid-approved options of how to get veggies in at these eating opportunities, make sure you're signed up to get my Muffin Club recipes so that you get these veggie-based muffin ideas each and every week in your inbox. All you have to do is go to veggiesandvirtue.com/Muffin Club 2023 to sign up.